Hey guys, wanted to make a video on the footprint, what it is, and what context you can derive from it. So first off, what the footprint is essentially is it is a historical view of the tape and or the depth of market. And so we're seeing all the orders, where they're happening, where people are positioning, and what's actually going on inside each bar, right? If you're looking at a candlestick chart, you're only going to see the open, the close, and the wicks, right? You're not seeing what's actually happening, where the orders are, where people are positioning. And so you'll have less context to work off to understand what's actually happening. But with a footprint, you're able to see all of that stuff and what is actually going on. And so the first thing you need to understand if you're new to the footprint is that we are moving in a diagonal fashion. So the right side of each bar is the buy side. So anytime we have somebody market buying, it's showing here on the right side, and market buying moves us up. And then on the left side, we have all the market sell orders. And so these would be market sell orders that transacted at bid. These would be market buy orders that transacted at the offer. And so what this does is it creates a diagonal relationship. So when we market buy, we move up and we show on the right side. When we market sell, we move down and we show on the left side. And this is what a normal transaction would be. And so as we look at this will make a lot more sense. So at the top of each bar, you can see most of the bars have a 0 and then another number. And this would make sense because let's say at the bottom of this bar, we have 10 lots sold and then we reversed. And so when somebody buys, it moves us back into this area where we have 109, right? And so that makes sense. Same thing here. We have a buy order and it moves us up to 27. So now if somebody sells, it's going to move us back down to 41. And so these would be considered finished auctions. But this isn't always the case. We don't always actually have this diagonal. And so these would be finished auctions. And I'm going to go ahead and type that out. Finished auction. And then right down here we have an unfinished auction. So what an unfinished auction is this is when we are moving up or down, and what happens here is you can see there's not a 0 on the other side, right? So what's happening here, instead of this being diagonal, right, let's say we're buying up into this area, and usually what would happen is we'd buy into that next area and then sell down right here, and then we'd have a number up here and a 0. I'm sorry. But in this case, we had the bids move up and the offer moved up. And so even though we didn't transact up here, we had the bid move up. And so now we're expecting a transactional move like this, but then nobody bought into this level and people sold into this level. And so that's what creates these two side-by-side numbers. And then we moved back down. So this would be considered a unfinished auction as we didn't end in what we would consider somewhat of a finish up here, because people are still willing to bid and move their bids up. And so this kind of can be indicative of us wanting to move higher. And then the next thing we see is something called exhaustion. And so we can see that down here and down here. So this can be on either side. And what exhaustion is it's when we have 2 or more where we have either 2 zeros or a 0 and a really small number. And what this indicates is that the bid or the offer is not following as quickly. And so in this case, the offer isn't following down as quickly. And so when people buy, it moves us up a lot quicker, as sellers are a lot less willing to move their offers down. So in this other case, in the unfinished auction, right, the bidders are moving up, like they're just jamming it up. In this case, either the move was super quick and that reversal is really quick, that the offer was never able to follow, or the offers are just getting exhausted and not moving down. And so these can be indicative of a reversal. And so as you can see, we have these exhaustion points, and then right after, we have something we would call an imbalance. So in exhaustion, indicative of a reversal, and then we have an imbalance right here. So what an imbalance is it's when in this case, we bought through these levels, 207, 54, and then we had 22, and we never sold back down into here. So this is normally caused by sweeps, where we are having a breakout and somebody's buying tons of lots, tons of orders coming through on the buy side, and we're just shooting up and we never go back down into this area. And so this just shows us that there's an imbalance of buyers or an imbalance of sellers. Up here it would be sellers. The more columns we have that are like this, probably the more strong the move. And so this just shows that we have very strong buyers or very strong sellers pushing us, and then we are never going back down and selling into that area. And so all these things can be great to show us kind of the context of what's happening, what to look for. And then the last thing we look for is absorption. So absorption isn't necessarily, I would say, like these other ones where they kind of give you an indication of what direction, right? The exhaustion kind of tells us, okay, we might reverse. The imbalance kind of shows us, okay, we might be breaking out to this direction. And so these kind of give us like directional biases, right? But in terms of absorption, I would view it a lot more like positioning. So absorption kind of shows us where a lot of orders are being transacted, and then based on that you can see which people are getting trapped, which people are getting screwed, right? So an example we can see, absorption is when we have a lot of market buy orders and a lot of market sell orders, but they are being absorbed or shouldered by the resting liquidity, the limit orders. So as you can see up here, this would be an example of absorption. So you can see 4,589 lots were bought into 85s, but that didn't move us up. What normally would happen is that would go through all those limit orders and it would move us up. But in this case, since there was somebody on the offer that was just absorbing all those orders, we can see those orders didn't move us up. And so we can kind of use this contextually as we see there's a big like positioning up here at 85. And so we have this kind of range. And so now once we break down, we have a huge move down. These people get stuck up here at 85, and then we move all the way down to 63. And so you can expect one of two things, right? You can expect the person market buying to win this auction, or you can expect them to lose, right? So in this case, right, the buyer didn't move us anywhere, and then what happens is after we move down, they get trapped. But you got to know this could happen both ways. We could have the buyer take us higher, and then this person who is on the offer, if they were shorting, then they would now be trapped right here, and that would be fuel to move us to the upside. So absorption, it's all contextual, and I'll show you kind of on a different chart this chart is colored based on the ratio, the buy to sell. The more blue, the more buy order imbalance, and then the more red it is, the more sell order imbalance. So we can see where the absorption is happening. And so you can see right there, super blue, but also you can see all of this red. So tons of selling and buying were happening, and both sides were getting absorbed. And so that can kind of just show us there's tons of people positioned right here. And so then these areas become important for contextual purposes and in terms of positioning and where people are positioned at. And so those are the main things to look out for. We have finished auctions, unfinished auctions, exhaustion, imbalances, and then absorption. And so we can look at all of these different things and kind of come to different conclusions at different locations at what will happen.